Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Crocus Experience. Today, I am joined by Scott Morse, who I believe was the very first listener and one of the biggest supporters of the show. So I'm very excited to kind of be going full circle back to the beginning here, and finally having Scott on the show because he has not only been a supporter, but he's got a lot of stuff on the go as well. So Scott, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to finally be on.
Yeah, great to make this happen. We've rescheduled it a little bit, a couple times, but tell people a little bit about who you are, what you're up to, and where you are, and then we'll just dive into wherever this conversation takes us.
Sounds good. My name is Scott Morse, and my main project is I operate Arch City Sealcoating in St. Louis, Missouri, and we are an asphalt maintenance contractor. I also have a YouTube channel that's called Blacktop Tech Talk, which, as of this year, has been folded into and joined forces with Marvin Joels with Blacktop Banter. And I also operate Disaster Area Productions, which is a musical technical support company.
Man, it's you've got a lot on the go. Well, I want to touch on I want to touch on all of those things. Let's talk about the thing that you talk about the least, but I think it's the most curious to me, and that is Disaster Area Productions. How did this come about? Like, have you always been in the music scene, and like bring us up to speed on that?
Yeah, I've always been involved in music. I think I did my first gig. I was probably 12 or 13 at a skating rink, and it
I
just
love
kind
it.
of snowballed from there. I eventually learned that I was a solid mediocre musician, but I had a lot of technical aptitude. So I wound up jumping kind of to the other side of the stage, so to speak, and I started doing lights and sound and what we call in the industry backline support. Backline is all of the instruments, everything that it takes to make a show happen.
Yeah.
So I mostly focus on that sort of stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah, so for people who are listening, you're with Disaster Area Productions, like, what is it that you do? Because I see you all over the place.
um, so previously, out of high school and stuff, I did a lot of work with larger production companies and did things basically as kind of like a hired gun or an independent contractor, and I would go and take care of whatever problems were needed wherever, or just provide basic stagehand labor or stagehand skills.
Mhm.
um, Went to college, kind of shelved all that, and had a whole other life. I worked as a BMW master mechanic for 25 years, retired out of that last year. A couple of years ago, a good friend of mine, Blackie Starks, had a big show and asked me, "Hey, do you still do any of that stuff?" It's like, I haven't done any of that in years. It's like, but can you? It's like, well, yeah, sure, it's not a problem. So I wound up, teching for a few of his shows, and a few people noticed me, and it's kind of like, "Oh, hey, you're back. You're back, right?" And
Yeah.
the phone started ringing, and a couple of opportunities fell in my lap, and I was attending a show with my wife and some friends. It was Eric Martin, who is the lead singer for the band Mr. Big, very popular '90s act. Had a lot of big hits. He broke a string on stage, and he looks out to the audience and is like, are there any guitar techs here? I broke a string, and my wife is shoving me towards the stage. Go, go, go. So I wound up changing the string on the stage and handing him the guitar back mid song, and they finished the rest of the set. And that really just kind of dragged me. I don't want to say full time back in, but it brought me to that point where I had to decide: am I really going to be back or not? And yeah, I decided to go ahead and have some fun this time. And
That's cool. So you're super laid back about it, but like, out of all the people there, you were the one that changed the string. Like, did you just walk up there? And the fact that your phone's ringing when people see you get back into it, like, you're good at what you do.
yeah,
You are a very laid back character on social media. and while we're chatting here, but you're good at what you do. So like, talk a little bit about that.
It's just kind of a mindset and kind of triaging, what's the word I'm thinking of? Crisis management. You have to triage the things that are happening around you in life, and for the most part, it's a pretty low level, and you don't really have to do much. But once in a while, something happens and requires your full attention. You have to decide what's happening and what's going on and where you need to be in that mix. And I've just kind of got that knack for it, and that really helps me in a lot of ways in life, but especially in that kind of job, because um, doing the music thing is 99% complete boredom and mundane tasks. You're pushing equipment around and doing whatever and trying to find a hamburger somewhere. And then it's 1% complete and total, meltdown chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to be able to figure out how to work your way through it, because one way or another, the show is going to happen. And it's your job to make sure that the show happens, because there's, 5 people, 50 people, 50,000 people out there that are waiting for a show.
Man, that's crazy. So how long did it take to change his string?
Including running to the green room or the dressing room, which was downstairs. So I had to run downstairs, get to his guitar case, get a string out of it, run back up the stairs, and restring it. It took about 2.5, 3 minutes.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Actually doing the string, probably less than a minute.
Wow. So that's not even a song that he missed.
No, and huge props to PJ Farley, who's the bass player for the band Trickster, who does a lot of work with Eric, and Ben Haas, who is a phenomenal percussionist. And they just kind of kept a little groove going. They just like kind of looped the
Where they
chorus of
were,
the song
yeah.
over and over and over again for about 3 minutes while I got that knocked out. And
man, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Everybody had a good time, and the show went on.
Yeah. And then where does BMW come in? Because I know you just left that, but where did that's a whole, that's definitely some technical skills. I saw you griping about it all the time. Everybody knows working on BMW cars is a load of fun, but how did that come about?
Out of college, I met my former wife, and we relocated up into the Chicago area. And I didn't finish college, so I was kind of trying to figure out what to do next. And I had a background working on cars as a kid and teenager and stuff like that. And I just kind of fell into a job at a car dealership. It was a Saab Volvo dealership. Just kind of fell into the job, washing cars, moving stuff around on the parking lot. And, that lasted probably a month or two. And, one of the service managers came up to me and says, "Hey, you think you can change the oil on a car without screwing it up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can change the oil on a car." Like, "Great, bring some tools tomorrow, because tomorrow you start being a tech."
All right.
And
had they seen anything, or they just were in a pinch?
they were a little shorthanded, but they were just like, give the kid a shot.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the industry works. You watch them real close for a month or two. If they don't wreck any cars or do anything really
Make
dumb,
sure they're not completely stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. Then, up the ladder you go.
Yeah.
And see if you can handle more and more responsibility. And I worked there for a couple of years, and then had an opportunity to jump over to BMW, which was excellent timing, because Saab was starting to fade from the U.S. market. And I had a wonderful career. It was really challenging. I didn't necessarily set out to become a mechanic, but when that path kind of opened up, I decided, okay, if I'm going to be a mechanic, I'm going to do this to the very best of my abilities and at the very highest level that I possibly can. So let's find what's the hardest car to work on. and it was BMW, and I was like, well, that's where I'm going. And then I had an opportunity to go there and spent a couple of decades working on those cars, and it was a wonderfully frustrating experience, and I'm grateful for it, and I never want to do it again.
Yeah, you're done. What makes BMW so hard for those that are listening? Like, aside from the fact that everything's just completely packed in there.
Yeah, the layout and the architecture, physical architecture of the cars is very dense. There's very little wasted room um, in spaces that you can't see. Under the dash, under the seats, and the center console, and the door panels. Behind all those trim panels, there is just
It's
an
not just
immense
empty
amount of
space.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's very little empty space anywhere. But what really made the cars challenging to work on was the technology. BMW has always been a very technically motivated company. They were the first auto manufacturer to start using fiber optic networks for communications in production cars.
Mhm.
And they've got just so many firsts and innovations. So it was always constantly challenging. There was always something new to learn, and it made it a lot of fun, and it made it a lot of migraines. But it was a great experience.
Yeah, I love it. What makes you never want to go back?
Um, 25 years is a long time to do anything, especially for me. And mostly my retirement was a physical one.
Mm,
After doing that kind of work for so many years, my body is just kind of over it. My shoulders shot, my knees are tired, my hips are worn out. The arthritis in the hands is getting pretty gnarly.
mhm.
So uh, it was like one real serious injury away from me not being able to make a decision on my timeline.
Right.
So my wife and I decided that now was the time to walk away while it was within our control.
Yeah, I love it. How did Arch City come about? Because you were doing that, like, part-time, well, you own the business,
Yeah.
how did that go? Like, how did it happen, and then how did you manage that while you were a tech?
So Arch City actually started back in the early '90s.
Oh,
It
no way.
wasn't Yeah, it wasn't technically Arch City back then. I had a roommate in college that had a truck and a trailer and a tank, and he was going out doing this during the summer and sealing driveways and parking lots and doing stuff, for college money and beer money, and he was doing really well. And he started dragging me along to jobs, and I was having a good time. We're outside in the summer, and 20 something, and making good money and having a good time. And then he got married, had a kid, moved on to a different career. And there was a brief window for about 5 seconds where we had half a discussion about me buying him out. And I just really wasn't in the place to do that. I had other things going on. I was still kind of had one foot in the music industry at that moment, and I was going to college and then doing that. And I was kind of like, I passed on the opportunity, and he went on his way and I went on mine. And how Arch City came about was um, when I moved back to St. Louis from the Chicago area, um, after I got married to my current wife. Um, Her father is an electrical contractor,
Mhm.
and he was kicking around ideas of different things to do or add to his services. And we were just kind of having a dinner table discussion. And I was like, well, I did this stuff in college. It wasn't so bad. We made pretty good money, and it really didn't take a lot of investment. There really wasn't much to it besides truck, tank, and a trailer. And he's like, okay, write me up a business plan, give it to me, and if it makes sense, we'll do it. And I did some research, which turns out to be one of my kryptonite kind of things. So I did some research for about 6 months, and put together a business plan, gave it to him. He read it, and kind of, to my surprise, like, okay, let's do it.
When you say
And that was
kryptonite,
it.
you mean like you just go down the rabbit holes?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But yeah, he said, okay, let's do it, and he fronted the money, and we bought a used truck and a brand new trailer and some other used and new equipment, put it all together, and I started going out and putting in bids and getting jobs, and that's where it's been for the last 8 years. But when I retired from being a mechanic last year, it was about halfway through the season, so it was a little bit of a scramble to do that transition because I really didn't plan that far ahead to
sure.
make that transition. It was a little shorter, a little more unexpected than I'm used to.
Yeah,
But I just went out and knocked out as much work as I possibly could until the end of the season, and we had, by a huge margin, our best year ever.
nice.
Um, Probably 3 times our best gross.
That's phenomenal. So how were you doing that, like, before you, left the mechanic world? How were you managing that?
I do bids after work, and occasionally do like prep work after work.
Yeah,
So I'd work as a mechanic all day. I'd jump in my truck, and then I'd either go out and do bids, or I'd go prep driveways and stuff, get them ready to go, and then on the weekends I'd go out and I'd seal as much as I possibly could,
hmm.
and then Monday morning wash, rinse, repeat.
So you didn't have a crew doing it, like, during the days?
Nope, nope. Except for, I want to say, the year before last, we did have a friend that came up a couple of summers and helped us out. The first year he came up, he'd come up for, he lives in Texas,
Yeah,
and Kelvin would come up and help us out for, a week or two, and then he'd head back, and then he'd come back and do another stretch. And it worked out well for him. He still had time, with his wife and family down in Texas, and he used to work offshore oil rigs. So he was kind of used to that cycle, a few weeks on, a few weeks off. And then the summer before last, him and his wife came up, and they did probably like a 3 or 4 month stretch,
nice.
and they knocked out as much work as they possibly could.
That's amazing. Very cool. What a journey. What a journey. So where are you now? That kind of brings us up to the present.
Yep.
You know, we we haven't done the whole life journey, but for the major things that I know about anyway. Um, so are you like hitting Arch City super hard? I
Oh
know
yeah.
Blacktop Banter and all of that starts to come in here. Talk a little bit about the path this year.
Um, this year it feels like just kind of a whole new business, a whole new project, a whole new outlook on everything. Um, I'm taking, not that I never took Arch City seriously, but I'm taking it much more seriously this year.
Mhm.
I'm much more focused on real growth and real goals,
Yeah,
instead of just seeing how it grows and seeing where it goes. And it's of course, now that it's full time, it's the main source of income. So now it
it
becomes very
matters.
real.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
it really matters.
yeah.
um and then uh the content that I was making before for my own YouTube channel, Blacktop Tech Talk, I'm directing all of that content now to Blacktop Banter, um, and the Blacktop Banter Success Group, which is really kind of what my goal with my project was anyway, was sharing information and mentoring people that are just trying to get into the asphalt maintenance trade,
Yeah.
and trying to find those skills without getting jumped on by all the trolls and
All the marketers.
misinformation.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it. That's so cool. So bring me up to speed because I've been seeing Marvin talk about Blacktop Banter. I know Cam's involved in it.
Yep.
Kyle is as well. You
Mhm.
are. What's the vision? What's the vision with that? And what can we expect kind of rolling out that you can talk about anyway?
Well, there's so much going on in the background. Marvin is, uh, I don't know how Marvin sleeps. talking about my sleep cycles.
Yeah, yeah.
He is
I we'll have to
he
have him
is
back on.
everywhere at once right now, pulling things together and making that project into his vision. But Blacktop Banter is basically unchanged. Blacktop Banter is the same that it's always been, only it's growing in huge leaps. Um, but he's also created the Blacktop Banter Success Group, which is a small group mentorship. And like you mentioned, it's Marvin and Cam and Kyle and me and a few others, paired with younger, uh, not necessarily age wise, but younger in experience, people either looking to get in the trade from, from the ground floor, or people that have been in for a year or two and are struggling and are trying to find ways to get past, their own personal firewalls for growth.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's really it's really been a fun project to be a part of, and I'm very honored that I was selected to be a part of it.
Yeah, solid group of guys, just at least the ones that I know. And then the content side of it is where he's really turning things up too, right? And
Yeah,
there's a,
yeah.
isn't there a marketing side branch to it as well?
Yes, I'm not much of a part of that, so I
Sure.
can't really speak to the marketing side of things and like the global vision of Blacktop Banter. Um, he's been very generous to bring me on, but also let me kind of pick my corner,
Hmm.
and stay with the mentorship stuff.
Yeah,
So I spend most of my time and energy working with, uh, helping to answer questions and training and mentorship on the technical aspects of what's going on.
I love it.
But yeah, they've got all kinds of crazy stuff happening. But
Uh,
I'm not generally in those meetings because I don't need to be.
yeah, no, that's fair. So talk a little bit about what you are chatting about in these mentorships. Like what does Scott, because we've kind of got an idea here, and I've been seeing this over the last 3-4 years we've been connected. You're very, very thoughtful and calculated with how you do anything. Talk a little bit about, for any business owner, but in the seal coating industry, when someone's getting in, what are some of the things that you're pointing them in the direction of doing? What are the things that you've found that didn't work well or did work well? Kind of walk us through that.
Um, well, a lot of the stuff that I learned, well, actually, everything that I learned is in those initial Blacktop Tech Talk videos on YouTube.
Hmm.
Um, and that's the foundation for everything that I've gotten figured out into how to make it work to do asphalt maintenance. Um, but the biggest lesson that I learned was, um, finding good suppliers and building those relationships with your suppliers.
Hmm.
Um, One of the most common questions that I see or get asked or get brought into was, hey, what's the best, product? What's the best sealer? You know, how do I get my hands on it? And I try to start off with letting them know as nicely as I can that they're asking the wrong questions. It doesn't really matter what the best sealer is. If you live in North Dakota and the sealer you think is the greatest comes out of Florida, that's a completely impractical solution to your problem.
Because it's been
Shipping,
developed in the wrong climate.
yeah, shipping 4,000 gallons at a time of sealer halfway across the country is going to absolutely destroy your overhead costs.
Yeah.
You won't be able to compete at all. I mean, even if you have no competition in your area, nobody's going to want to pay, $3 a square foot to have the driveway sealed.
Hmm.
It's a no starter.
Yeah.
Um, it's finding what's available in your area that makes sense, that's financially smart, logistically practical, and then choosing the suppliers that align with your goals and are willing to help you reach them. Because, another thing is that it doesn't matter if it's the greatest product. If you walk in there and they make you feel unwelcome, or, you're bothered because you only buy, 200 gallons at a time because you're just starting out, if they treat you like that, there's no support there. They're not really going to help you grow.
Yeah.
But if you've got a place that sells a good product and is happy to see you and will answer your questions or do whatever they can just because you're buying 40 gallons that day to do one driveway, that's a better place to go.
That's huge. How does that play out as you grow? Obviously that's the, a relationship we hope with all our suppliers and business connections.
Yes.
But what's the importance of that as you grow, aside from, price being the obvious one, but the relationship side, kind of the soft side of that equation, how does that play as you grow?
As you grow, that becomes infinitely more important than any pricing issues. If you've got a supplier like, the one I have, or other ones that I know, that work with other people in this kind of positive way. If you're stuck on a job for a critical customer on a project that has to get done by a specific deadline, and you've got an equipment problem or you run out of material, and if you can call that supplier up, not all the time, but you can call them up at 2 o'clock in the morning and know that they'll come in and turn the pumps on and fill your tank, or send you down the road with a rental seal coat tank, or whatever it is that you need. If they're willing to do whatever it takes to help you get the job done, that's the relationship, soft side win that you get by building those relationships.
Yeah. With the how many 2 o'clock times have you had to call them in?
Once.
Yeah, I figured there was a story there because that was awfully
Yes.
specific.
Yep, once, and they bailed us out, and we got the job done, and everybody was sleep deprived, but ultimately happy.
Yeah, because striping happens a lot at night. And for those listening, seal coating can as well. It typically applied a little bit more during the day. But what was going on with your 2 o'clock in the middle of the night job?
There was a miscalculation on my side,
Hmm.
on the square footage of the property. It was for me, a medium-sized parking lot. It was probably about, I want to say, about 12,000, 15,000 square feet. So not a huge thing, but a little on the bigger side for me because I mostly focus on residential.
Yeah.
Um, and I mismeasured one corner of the lot and kind of cut the end of it off, and yeah, I was off by a bit. Um, but I only had a very short window over a holiday weekend for this business that is normally open 7 days a week.
Hmm.
But they happened to be closed for the holiday, and they closed early on the day before.
Yeah.
So I had like this 36-hour window to get it done and get it striped and get it back open for them. And when I got, about, I don't know, about a 10 or 15 foot stripe from the end of the parking lot trying to seal it, and realized that there wasn't going to be enough in the tank.
Yeah.
I shot a text to my supplier and was like, "Hey, are you awake by any chance? I really hate to do this to you, but," and yeah, it wasn't a problem, and we got it done.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. Do you do a lot of striping?
Only on the jobs that I seal. I don't generally get calls just for striping.
Sure. Sure. Got it.
But that seems to be kind of a market thing here. I know there are one or two contractors in town that just specialize in striping,
Hmm.
um, but for the most part, everybody kind of does their own.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to find somebody to do striping for you, which is why I wound up buying my own striping equipment, because I called around and called around trying to find somebody to stripe the first parking lot that I ever did, and nobody would ever even come out and do a bid. And I was like,
Really?
okay, well, I guess I've got to figure out how to do this too.
Yeah. Yeah. Wild. Wild. So are you pushing more into commercial now, or are you still sticking with driveways?
Um, I'm still pretty happy with the little corner of the market that I've developed for myself.
Yeah.
I'm doing probably 90% residential, 10% commercial.
Yeah.
And the commercial stuff I do is on the smaller side. I think the biggest lot I ever did was like 20,000 square feet.
Mhm.
So very small by commercial standards. But the driveways that I do uh, tend to be between 5,000, 10,000 square feet. So for driveways, they're pretty big.
Yeah.
And I work a lot in what we call in St. Louis the Valley, which is a lot of the higher end, high net worth residential areas.
Yeah.
These people tend to be, uh, rightfully so, very particular about the work that's done on their properties because the properties are very valuable. And
Yeah.
since most of the work I do is by hand instead of by machine or sprayed, I have the ability to focus on those fine edges and fine details because they don't want to see sealer splashed all over their $1 zillion hardscaped edge driveway
Yeah. Or their garage door or whatever the
or the
case may
garage
be.
door or
Yeah.
anything else. Or yeah, they don't want to hear about problems.
Yeah.
um,
So is it
but
is it
that developed out of the ability to handle those customers, developed out of the skills that I gained working on BMWs and higher end vehicles and dealing with them as automotive customers, and now I'm dealing with them as property owners.
yeah. Did you ever get any upsells or connections through the BMW side?
No, but I've had lots of conversations actually working on people's properties. Like, oh hey, nice 6 Series convertible.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So is it just you out on the in the field, or do you have a, crew lining up for this year, or has it always been you, always will be you?
It's always mostly been me, except for the jobs that my friend Kelvin helped out,
Yeah.
and the first year or two we had a couple other family friends jump in and help it out here and there. My wife has been out on job sites a number of times, and she's jumped in and helped too. This year, it's definitely going to be all me, but I'm probably going to wind up later in the season once it really gets rolling, trying to add at least one more person and then scale up from there.
Nice.
Um, my goal next year is to have me running a crew and then two other crews.
Nice. That's some big growth to
Yep.
go from you. That's phenomenal. Do you plan to do you have any plans to step back into more of just the ownership role?
Yeah, eventually, sure.
Yeah.
And once I get the job, once I get Arch City scaled up to the level that I want, then I'm going to step back into more of like administrative leadership roles. And then what I really want to do is, find somebody that I can develop into that leadership role. And then I can step away from the company entirely for the most part and then go on to the next project.
What do you think the next project's gonna be?
No idea. We'll find out when we
Isn't
get
that the
there.
beauty of it?
I know. I could get into dumpsters or who
Any
knows
number of
what.
things, yeah, yeah, phenomenal. So what's your time like, how often are you out on the road then with disaster area productions?
Um, that's very scattered.
Yeah,
Like I just got back from Nashville last week, week before. Next week I'm headed to the East Coast. I've got a show in New Jersey and a show in Connecticut,
yeah,
and then I'm back again. And but that's also the great thing about being self-employed and having Arch City is that if an artist calls me up and says, hey, I need you for these shows such and such dates, I can block that off on my calendar and do it
yeah, yeah,
because I control my time now, and
yeah,
that's been the biggest blessing out of all of this is that I am absolutely 100% in control of my time. I can dedicate it to whatever it is I want to do.
Did you find that shocking a little bit when you went from like the rigid schedule to having a wide open schedule?
Yes.
Yeah.
it was it was it was a very overwhelming black hole,
Yeah.
for a while there, that where I literally just didn't know what to do because I was so used to having the structure of my time dictated to me, and then there wasn't anybody telling me anything. And
Yeah.
so I kind of wandered aimlessly for a while there, and then I was like, okay, I gotta kind of tighten this up and
Yeah.
and get
It
some,
took me about 3
create some structure. But it was nice to just kind of take a break and do whatever for a minute.
Yeah, for sure. It took me about 3, 4 months,
Yeah,
going right when I went full time. It was like, "Oh, I have so much time, I would be so more much more productive." My productivity, like, of, like, a 24-hour period went way down.
oh yeah,
Like,
like a
it was
crater.
crazy
Yeah,
because
yeah, it
you're
was about
used
the
to,
same
like
timeline for me. It was about 3 4 months, and then I just kind of looked around. I was like, all right, I got to get up and do something and start working a calendar again. And
yeah, yeah,
otherwise, I'm just
Pavlov's
gonna
the
I'm not gonna ever do anything ever again.
exactly, yeah, the law I think it's Pavlov's law, where, like, the work expands to fill the time. So if you got more time, you're gonna take
Exactly.
more time to do the work. 100%. What would you tell someone who's just getting in the business?
Find a mentor. Um, Whether it's somebody locally already in the industry and you go work for them, you find somebody in one of the Facebook groups or through Blacktop Banter, or just however you can find a mentor that's willing to give you some time and give you some knowledge. That leg up is every advantage that you need, because the trade itself is deceivingly simple. It's you can distill it down to, well, you just kick the bucket of sealer over on the driveway and smear it around and you're done. And it's essentially that, but the technical aspects and the science of why you're doing what you do and how you're doing it, is all the difference between a, an unacceptable job, a mediocre job, and what the customer paid for.
Yeah,
And having a mentor kind of jumpstart that knowledge path for you is a huge thing.
that's huge. I mean, isn't that any industry? I see that in junk removal. I see it in seal coating. The industries, the companies we
Mhm.
work with. It's a lot of these industries, power washing. It's the same way. They're low barrier to entry.
Yeah.
It's like how hard can it be to spray a house or smear some seal coat or pick up people's junk?
Yeah, until you blow somebody's windows out and take the paint off the siding and the siding off the house, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
it's how hard can it be?
How hard can it be? I mean, and here's the other thing too is everyone's like, well, that other industry is so easy. We sit here in the muck of our business,
Mhm.
being like, oh, this is so brutal. I thought it was going to be so easy. Let me go try this other thing. It's like every business is like this.
Yeah.
Every business has these challenges, and it is what you make it. It is how you structure it. And getting a mentor, Scott, I don't think we'd be sitting here chatting if I hadn't gotten multiple over the years.
Yeah.
The different phases that I've been in has been different people, helping to guide me. But it's like, man, you can compress time by learning from other people's experiences a lot
Oh,
faster.
exponentially.
Yeah. We don't someone said we don't have a long enough life to make all the mistakes we need to learn everything that we need to learn. So like
This
go
is true.
go
And
find
that was actually a discussion that we had on one of the Blacktop Banter support group calls last week. Um, we were kind of talking about what fears, what things are holding you back, and my answer was time.
Mhm.
My biggest fear is I am afraid that I don't have enough time, and not in the way you think, because there is no solution to my fear. It's not that it's I have poor time management. I don't have enough hours in the day. That kind of a thing. My fear is that I don't have enough time left in this life
Mhm.
to achieve all of the things that I want to do, that I need to do to create a legacy for my family when I'm gone. that's, that's the fear that drives me, that I wake up every day, that, I've got to get these things done. I've got to keep, pushing, because none of us know how much time we have left. So I've got to get as much of this stuff done as I can before I'm gone.
That's an interesting balance to strike. Alyssa and I were just talking about this the other day. Someone made a post about how, as men, if our wife is like, "Hey, I want this," or "I'd really like to get this house," and you're like, "Yeah, all right, cool," we just double down and we make it happen.
Mhm.
And so for me, the challenge has always been, as a business owner, how do I find the balance between being a husband and a father, running after 3 kids, to, splitting up that time with the business, and then with Alyssa too. I kind of have 3 investments that I'm working on,
Yeah.
right? There's the business, there's our relationship, and then there's the kids. And so finding that balance while still being in that hustle is tough. What do you find that helps you balance those things?
Um, well, it is managing your time. You have to set aside the time to do all of the things that you need to do and want to do, and your family and friends and those things outside of your business need to be on that list too. When you
Mhm.
forget about including those things, you automatically, exclude them to zero.
Yeah.
They stop existing when you don't make sure they're there. Um, and you know, it's a tough balance for me, because I live in a different state than my children, so logistics there are a little tougher. I never get to see them anywhere near as much as I would like to.
Mhm.
Um, but I make the best effort that I can. My wife is hugely supportive of all of my uh, wacky endeavors and projects, and she humors me and supports me to no end. And that's a huge blessing too. But um, she sees the vision and the goals that I have, mostly because she's a captive audience. So she has to listen to me. But no, she she hears what I'm talking about, and she sees the things that I see that I want to do, and she's all in. So that makes a huge difference too. That there is not just somebody that's okay with what you're doing, but they're out there in your corner cheering for you. Go go go.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, when you can come in and say, "Hey, I just landed this contract," or "I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna be out all night, striping this parking lot," or whatever, right? There's,
Yep.
having that person in your corner, it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Makes all the difference. What does legacy mean to you? You mentioned that.
Um, I just I have this vision in my head, um, that's kind of a mirror of my life, but expanded and enhanced. Um, I've worked, very hard my whole life, um, and I've made the most of every opportunity that's come along my way. And because I was open to it, I've been presented with some amazing opportunities. I've worked and been around, rock stars and Michelin starred chefs. I've worked with some of the highest ranked automotive technicians, not just in my city, but globally. Um, I've same thing jumping into asphalt. I've been fortunate to uh, be included in some amazing circles with leaders and people with big visions for the industry and the trade. But the legacy that I'm trying to create is one for you know my my family, and specifically my kids. Not so much that there's a college fund and this and that and whatever. I don't care if they go to college. I don't care what they do, as long as they find whatever it is that makes them happy, that they want to do.
Mhm.
And my goal is, in that legacy, to create the opportunity for them to discover what it is inside them that, they can create something with.
That's isn't that the ultimate goal, right? Being able to
Yep.
kind of follow the path that you have the desire for. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Hopefully not mechanics.
You're gonna point them away from that. Dissuade that
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
possible.
Maybe don't work on cars.
Yeah. Why would you say that? I'm laughing because
It's a
I think I understand, but I want to dig deeper into it.
it's a really it's a really tough industry. It's a really tough trade. And one that I don't think people really necessarily realize. They drop their car off and it gets fixed,
Magically gets
hopefully,
fixed.
and they grumble about how much it costs and drive on their way. But on in the back of house in the shop, it's a very difficult environment. Physically, environmentally, emotionally, financially. I had a great career and I was well paid for the work that I did. But the investment that mechanics have to make in themselves for training and equipment and tools is is right on the edge of just being, financially devastating.
Mm.
A basic toolbox, $10,000 to $15,000, and then you throw another, $20,000 to $30,000 worth of tools in that. Those all come out of every mechanic's pocket. Um, Training sometimes provided for by the shop you work at, especially if you're at a manufacturer's dealership. But if you're at a smaller independent shop, it may all be on you. You may have to pay for your own training too.
Hmm.
So it's a tough gig, and there's very little recognition or acknowledgement for what happens kind of behind the curtain. And then you add on to the physical toll that it takes doing
Yeah.
that kind of work every day. It's a lot.
Are there any dealerships anywhere that buy the tools for the crew?
Very, very few. Like,
Why do you think that is? Because I would agree, like, with
I mean,
everyone
there are
everywhere that I've
tools.
seen, but
There are what are called shop tools that are owned by the dealership, and those are the special tools that are supplied by the manufacturer, whether it's Ford or BMW or Toyota or whatever. They supply specific tools to each dealership for critical jobs,
mhm,
um, and they're generally really expensive, and they don't get used, really frequently enough that every technician should have this one tool.
mhm,
It gets used once in a while when you pull an engine or rebuild a transmission or do something like that.
yeah,
Um, so there are tools that are supplied by the dealership, but kind of the idea behind it is that everybody's going to need a screwdriver and a wrench and a socket and a hammer and just buy your own.
hmm.
Um, Otherwise,
Tools are not cheap. Tools are not
no,
cheap.
they're not. No, they're not.
Yeah, it's,
I've got a whole Snap-on toolbox full of them, just collecting dust now.
Snap-on is the least cheap
Ironically,
of all of
I
them.
bought a brand new toolbox 2 years ago because my old box had basically just kind of collapsed in itself like
Yeah.
something out of a Simpsons episode. And I was faced with, okay, I've got to buy a box. So I had to buy a box. And then last year we decided to retire. I'm looking at the toolbox going, sweet.
Mhm.
So that's how many more years I've got to make payments on that? Awesome.
Yeah, Snap-on's not the cheapest one. It's the most one
No,
of the more expensive ones for sure. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Well, Scott, this has been fun. It's cool to see the man behind the curtain. No pun intended, but you're kind of just there. You've been very, very supportive of everything I've done. So I want to say again how much I appreciate that. And I know you're that
no
voice.
problem.
Yeah, I know that you're that voice for a lot of people in the industry. And so it's awesome to see you involved in Blacktop Banter, being able to give back to people. But this has been fun. It's been fun to chat, fun to
Yeah,
catch up, and always good to see where the journey is taking you next.
absolutely.
Awesome. Where
Yep.
can people find you? What's the best place to connect with you, especially people in seal coating who are looking for, that time tested advice that you're able to give them?
You can always find me directly, Scott Morse, on Facebook, or through the Blacktop Banter channels, or my Blacktop Tech Talk channel on YouTube. But if you're in any of the bigger Facebook asphalt maintenance groups, Sealcoating groups, you'll find me around there
You're pretty much in all of them.
trying to give good advice wherever I can.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah, and Scott does. He'll jump in, and if you're not completely crazy, he'll jump in and give you a hand if he can.
Dog's trying to get into the camera shot.
I love it. I love it. Well, Scott, as always, a pleasure to chat. And everyone who tuned in, appreciate you. Leave a comment, reach out to Scott if you can, and support what he's doing. And we'll see you guys next time.
Take care, everybody.